whatever they had me do throughout the weeks. I mean, I would say they were more on the cautious side of getting me out there right away with the bye week and everything in between, which definitely helped out big time. But just did every step by step every day, and everything went smooth. And officially got the word today that I was cleared. So it was super nice to hear from the doctors going through the whole process and ready to roll.
The next fight that they cut off was just him talking about gluten, but it was also equally important. What kind of an impact do you think Rob Gronkowski is going to have on Sunday, Nick?
An enormous one. He's the Patriots' most physically talented player. He's their second best player after Tom Brady. He's the best player in the whole league at his position. And against this particular Eagles team, this is a defense that's been outstanding all year long. One trouble spot for them has been athletic tight ends. Travis Kelce, early in the year in a game the Eagles lost, had a big game. Evan Ingram has had success against them in 2 games where the Giants had 400-plus yards of offense. You've seen this team with this position, with guys that can have a physical advantage over Malcolm Jenkins, who's probably the guy who will be matched up on Gronk a lot of the game. They've had trouble with that.
Why?
And I think Gronk gives everyone trouble, right? But for the Eagles in particular, I think a coach can probably speak to this better than me. However they work their defensive scheme, a true difference maker at that tight end position is a flex point for them. One spot where they give a little bit in order to take away maybe the other team's running game, the other team's #1 wide receiver, whatever their bigger focal points are. So if the Patriots didn't have Gronk in this game, you look around and say, they are going to have to manufacture offense, as opposed to, and I'm sure that'll still be part of the strategy, but we have seen the Pats in their biggest spots this year and in the last few years, break in case of emergency glass is Rob Gronkowski. We saw it against the Steelers. We saw it in the AFC Championship game they lost a few years ago. Gronk is their sometimes first and last resort, so it's enormously important he plays in this game, and he is now.
He changes the whole dynamic, and the thing with athletic tight ends, they do create coverage problems, but Gronk is a complete tight end, so you've got to make a decision defensively who you want to bring down there. So let's say you wanted to play a nickel defense and bring in a smaller defensive back to cover him, that's fine. But now you've got a little guy against a big guy who can block and block really effectively. It's not choosing either or with him. It's having to deal with that whole package. Then he allows those backs to work against the linebackers because they're not going to want to send the safeties out with the running backs. When they motion out of the backfield, they've got to keep him in tight to deal with him, and that creates other matchup issues. It's a real issue for Philly.
When you talk about this game, which is interesting that we don't always talk about, is these are 2 teams that both have tight ends in Zach Ertz and Rob Gronkowski that have led their team in both receptions and receiving yards. A good deal of their offense goes through their tight ends. It's great that they have Gronk back, and on the other side they have Zach Ertz.
And so the Ertz is a different discussion almost, in that what we have really seen, Ertz was great with Carson Wentz. Since Nick Foles has gotten there, they have gone to him a disproportionate amount of time. The league's leader in target percentage was at 20%, meaning when he runs a route, he is targeted 20% of the time. Zach Ertz with Nick Foles has been nearly 25%. He has been the security blanket times 5. Brady won't have to do that with Gronk, and the Patriots will never just totally skew one part of their offense to their best player. They'll skew it more to the best matchup, right? Like they will look at what we saw in the Super Bowl last year. It's not like James White's the best player on their team, but they said, oh, okay,
in this
matchup, and I wonder how much of James White's success was maybe because of the way the Falcons were trying to guard some of the other dynamic players on the Pats.
Well, the thing that's different here, too, is New England's going to take away Zach Ertz. So the fact that it's going to him a disproportionate amount of time, they're not going to give Nick Foles that luxury. They're going to force him to go somewhere else with the ball. New England and Tom Brady are used to operating with or without Gronk. It's not like he's had to rely on Gronk. The fact that he's there is an added bonus, but they've been very effective without him. He just creates additional problems for a defense where the Zach Ertz equation, as you said, it's a safety net, right, but they're going to take that safety net away.
The point that you made about if you want to go to nickel, if you want to put, typically what we see, so say that if you're playing the Seattle Seahawks, very often a team will just say, we're going to treat Jimmy Graham like a wide receiver. We're going to put a corner on him and try to guard him that way. And that can sometimes be effective. when the Patriots were going up against the Jags, I postulated, would you just put Jalen Ramsey on Gronk? He's your best corner. He's your most physically imposing corner. That's their biggest weapon. And Chris and you, I think, said, you can't do that because the Patriots will look at that and say, okay, you want to have three corners on the field? We will just check to a run and let Gronk block you. That's one of the reasons he's so difficult, because he can, if you put your best coverage guy on him, the Patriots will just switch to a running play and you utilize the fact that he might be the league's best blocking tight end as well as the league's best receiving tight end.
And that's what I don't think people appreciate. A lot of times when you go into the draft, you get two types of tight ends. You've got the receiving tight end and you've got the blocking tight end, and very rarely do you get both. But with Gronkowski, he's such a threat in the passing game, but he is a force in the running game, and they'll use him a significant amount in protection, too. There'll be times where he's getting double-teamed, and he's staying in to protect for Tom Brady, to chip on the defensive line, which opens up a ton of other options outside because you just don't have enough numbers to do all the things you want to do.
Wait, go ahead.
No, I just want to for the audience's sake, in the last 5 years, there have been 3 playoff games where Gronk was targeted at least 10 times. What do they all have in common? They were the closest games the Patriots have played. It was the loss to the last playoff game the Pats lost, the AFC Championship game against Denver, where Gronk famously had the 4th and 10 catch over the middle to get him down in scoring range, then I believe scored what could have been the game-tying touchdown, but they didn't get the 2-point conversion. It was the Super Bowl against Seattle, where he had 10 targets, a game the Patriots had to come back. It was a divisional playoff game against Baltimore that they won 35-31, a very close game where he had 13 targets. In their biggest spots, they find a way to get their best player the ball. They don't. I know you didn't like my theory that the Patriots early in the year are cautious with Gronk. I still wholeheartedly believe that, but they will not be. They certainly will not be cautious with him in this game. If they need to, they'll go to him a lot. They don't always need to, but in the biggest spots throughout, I mean, we've seen it. I remember the last Super Bowl the Patriots lost. What was the last throw of the game? It's a Hail Mary that Gronk almost caught. Like, they consistently, in big spots, go to, as most teams would, their most talented, their best player.
All right, so the Patriots do have Gronk back. Before we move on, you just said something. We talked all week about who the Patriots are going to sort of nullify on the Eagles' offense. We couldn't come up with one play, but maybe it is because of those numbers. Maybe it is Zach Ertz, and once you take Zach Ertz out, now they're forced to really scramble and figure something else out on offense.
Yeah, they want to make Nick Foles have to go to a second and third decision. And all anybody's talked about is how quickly he gets the ball out, how effective he's been since he's been able to do that. And when you start taking away those options and those places where he's really comfortable, now he's got to play left-handed, and that's always a strategy.
And only one tight end all year has even gotten 70 yards on the New England Patriots. So they've been very effective at taking away tight ends throughout the year. I think Coach is right. They will make sure Zach Ertz is not the guy to beat them on Sunday.
All right, speaking of Nick Foles, coming up, can Foles